Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to save money on your rent, and we've got some ripper ideas on how to even halve your rent. Stay tuned.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morning Minutes. Myself, Michael Bergio, Mark Novak, episode 1686. How to halve your rent overnight. Mark, good morning. What are we talking about here, especially in this economy, this marketplace that sounds very attractive to all tenants, residential and commercial?
Yeah, the word of the year for me is turbulent, and with turbulence, as a business in the Northern Beaches, we've always done really well in turbulent times. And agility is a key thing to this, guys and girls. And at the moment, probably people's biggest cost is rent, whether they're in a commercial, industrial, residential property. And we wanted to give you some tips on how to actually make some money in these turbulent times, not just save money, but make some money in these turbulent times. We've got some tips and tricks for you. Burge, what do you know?
Yeah, like I've always found the concept interesting in commercial property in particular. You're paying rent for 24 hours of use of that property. And a lot of businesses are only open 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. Sometimes they're closed more than they're open. So it's like, well, what's a way that you could make your rent lower by having use of that property nearly 24 hours. Now, a lot of commercial properties can be open 24 hours or at least be occupied 24 hours use. You actually sent me, we've been talking about this for years, like sweating the asset, where you might have a cafe that's open 6 till 2, 6 till 12. And then it's like, why don't you find a business that can rent the property at nighttime as a commercial kitchen, using all the same facilities, or a restaurant, and they're using it from 5 till 2 a.m. type of thing, and then you change over. And a lot of it, like I've seen people pay, especially in commercial kitchens, I've seen people pay just as much as someone's paying for rent for a whole property, that they're paying on a per hourly basis to lease a partial commercial kitchen for a couple hours, or vice versa with a restaurant. So I think, Mark, you sent me a great example of someone who's actually done this. We'll take credit. They watched the video a couple of years ago about it. What were those two businesses and how was that done?
You're not talking about the South African one, are you? From a couple of years
Yeah.
ago. You remember that?
Yeah.
This was probably the most inspiring one that I saw, and it was probably 5 years ago. I was in a clothing store in Durban, I think, in South Africa, and I'm walking through this clothing store, and I'm thinking there was two signs at the front. One was a pub, and one was the clothing store. Pretty cool clothing store, and a massive clothing store. And I'm walking through, going, man, everything was like it was a very cool setup. And I thought, man, this is a pub at night and this is a clothing store during the day. What a cool concept, the way they had it all set up. And I thought, I'm going to come back at night and see what the opposite looks like. So I went back that night, and it was a fully cocked pub, and then all of the clothing was in cages. So even when you're in the pub, you could actually go, I'm going to come back tomorrow and grab this, tomorrow and grab that. But it actually complemented the pub. So the pub got a personality because it was quite a cool clothing shop. And then the clothing shop got a personality because it was a pub. So they sort of really complemented each other. And even last night, I sent one over to Michael so we could talk about it today, because it was a really cool motorbike shop. That was like a panel beater. They did spray painting of motorbikes. And then during the day, they ran it, I think it was a noodle or ramen place.
Yeah,
Or sorry,
ramen, I
at
think.
night, it was a noodle ramen place. And I thought, what a great way. Like and it doesn't have to be you doing it. It can be
No.
a separate operator paying you rent for your premises, and you've effectively halve the rent of where you are, which makes you think about a lot of businesses in Sydney that could actually have the opportunity to halve their rent by bringing in an operator and be a cooler setup, shop, factory, whatever you are.
Yeah, and I think the simplest way to think about it is just like subleasing. A lot of people only think of subleasing when they're no longer using the property. But instead of thinking it as like yearly or monthly, I'm not using it, or like residential, I'm not using that room at the moment, I'll sublease it out. That's a great example. And same with the commercial. Instead of thinking I'm not going to use it for 6 months, so I'm moving somewhere else, now I'll sublease it. Think of it as like per day. How much are you not using per day? And could someone else operate a business out of there? You see it a lot where they work together sometimes in medical or a gym. You'll have a gym, they sublease out to a physio, have a room. I know in the mall, there's a physio with beauty salon.
Haircut,
There are
barber.
yes, there are so many great businesses that could share customers. So not only are they halving the rent for each other, but they could be referring customers to themselves as well. And I think more so now, it's important to sort of think outside the box with a lot of those options. And I love the ramen one and that pub example, because it creates, as you said, character and a point of difference for that
Yeah.
property. Like if you had a business like the motorcycle one, that you could have like old school bikes, and if people love that, they're going to pick that restaurant. And it's it's like you're almost getting a fit out without trying, because it's what they're doing for the business. So you can save that in fit out cost. For the secondary business, you may be saving on having to pay for the lease to be drawn up, having to put down an initial bond. So it could be a great way to give a business a go under somebody's lease umbrella as well. But then I think if it's a great concept, you'll do it a lot more permanent. But many ways to skin the cat.
Well, and you often see people in great businesses, they just add some different stock, like they're selling one thing and then they'll sell something completely different, but it still complements their business. But this is almost risk-free because the person's paying you rent from day one. They're bringing in their expertise, their customer base, their stock, and whatever they're doing, and you're doing well, particularly straight away from it. So I just want to encourage everyone to think outside of the box when it comes to, let's call it, a subletting doesn't do it justice, but
No.
I call it sweating the asset. If people can sweat the asset more, I was talking to a client the other day, and she's going to be doing Airbnb, so she's actually in a 3-bedder apartment, brand new. She's got a little bit of fallen into a bit of a pickle with hard times, and she's actually using flatmates.com.au. And she's renting out the other 2 rooms in the apartment. What struck me was what for a main bedroom or a primary room with an ensuite, how much people are paying and how much they're paying. And I was thinking, why are people paying that much? And, the concept of it being furnished already beautifully, the concept of like ripping in, ripping out, not having to pay a huge bond, just come straight in on one room. I think she was telling me the rates, they were $450 to $550 for a bedroom. They were $550 to $650 for a bedroom with an ensuite, which is a master bedroom. And I was like, that is just huge money for someone, but it's quite a lot of convenience because they've got a lovely living room all set up, kitchen all set up. They use the master bedroom, great. They pay $650 a week. They can leave in 6 months or 3 months or 9 months. There's no huge bond to pay. It's a way to really get ahead. It is sacrifice.
You're just breaking up a bit. You there?
It's a way for good cash, yeah.
Cool. And I think, and that's a great point, because there's that market, because your entry level, let's say nearly brand new studio is $600 a week. Brand new 1-bedroom is nearly $800 a week. So there is a huge market of basically $500 down. There's nothing for people to get. So they will go, well, I can't afford a property by myself. I'll rent if I can live in the area I want, still have a nice property, even if I got to share it with a stranger. Great, we'll get to know each other, especially if you're tourists or you're immigrants or you're new to an area. Get to meet someone. If you don't like it, you leave. If you do, so. But I think it's just more so relevant. Like I remember back in the day when we first brought on the boarding houses, they were like 300, 350 a week, and now they're 600. So previously renting a room, you might be $100 a week, $200 a week because someone could lease out their own studio for 300. But now that's 500, 600. So it's and what's that? 500 a week, 25 grand a year. That could be your interest or a principal and interest on a mortgage. So
And I know the government's looking at more apartments, more accommodation, more apartments, more accommodation, but surely there are empty rooms and spaces when it comes to commercial that are just simply not being utilized, or you can sweat the asset. So I know it's like if you need to put an extra person into Sydney, you need an extra apartment. Not necessarily. There's plenty of empty rooms out there where people can get some huge cash these days. And like you said, how those numbers have changed and transformed. Like that 25 grand a year for renting out that second bedroom, I find that astonishing money, $25,000 for a room that's under your nose. So I think for people out there, the message today is if you've got, you can actually increase your profits in your business by a small change like this. And even on your household income, you can increase your household income by maybe 25% by just getting that room rented. And they can be, you can benefit from it if you choose the right business or the right person.
100%. I think that's it.
Think about it, guys. Sweat the asset, whether it's an apartment or whether it's a commercial property. Thanks, Burge.
Great. Thank
See
you.
ya.